What's up, Banter fam? Good morning, good morning. I have a very interesting show for you guys today because I will be revealing 3 hot crypto narratives that I've identified as being very strong performers in 2022. Obviously, you guys see Thorchain has been pumping, so we have to dig into what is happening on Rune right now, why it's pumping, and also look at another secret narrative which I think is going to do very well this year. Let's get straight into the show. So the first thing to note is that the Bitcoin price is pumping after this FOMC meeting. So we're up to 40,800 despite being at the lows of 37K just a few days ago. So it's nice to see a little bit of upwards price momentum right now from the Bitcoin price. And we did try and reclaim this 42K region, got rejected, but we are settling nicely in the 40,800 region. So it's good to see some strength coming back into the market. But where the real strength is coming right now is not in Bitcoin, it's actually in the total too. So this is the total crypto market cap excluding Bitcoin, and it's pushing up past the $1 trillion mark. This level has been a level of resistance previously, and we've had a big push up in price movement from the total too. So this suggests to me that the market is in favor of the alts right now. Obviously, Bitcoin pumping is positive for the market, but with the dominance coming down slightly and the total too going up a little bit, that is suggesting that the alts are looking good. So this market is not scared right now. If we were in a truly bearish market, these altcoins wouldn't be pumping harder than Bitcoin when Bitcoin does rise. So that is one positive indicator for us when we are looking objectively at this market and where we sit. There is still a lot of strength in the alts. People want to own these altcoins, buy these altcoins, and stake these altcoins. The FOMC meeting yesterday was in line with expectations. They did raise the rates by 25 basis points. This was pretty much in line with what people were expecting. The undertone of the entire meeting was slightly hawkish. They do want to raise rates 6 times this year with a target of 2%. However, I think that it wasn't to the point where it scared the market off. We were expecting that this kind of rate hike was in play. So it wasn't too scary for the market. Obviously, we have responded quite strongly, and the S&P also responded quite strongly to the news, the FOMC meeting, with a plus 2.24% increase. Right now, Bitcoin is still very correlated to this market, which means that if the S&P rises, Bitcoin tends to pump and pump harder. If the S&P drops, Bitcoin is tending to follow that on the downside as well. So we are still fairly correlated with the crypto and traditional markets right now, and that is just where we're sitting right now. So the markets the traditional markets do have an impact on how the Bitcoin price will be performing this year. And we all know that whatever happens to Bitcoin will happen to the alts. So it is a very important thing to look at where the Bitcoin price is headed right now. The thing with the FOMC meeting is markets hate uncertainty. So before the FOMC meeting, we were seeing a lot of volatility because people were speculating on what the tone of the meeting would be. Now the meeting is out, despite having a hawkish undertone, people are positive because uncertainty has been removed from the market, which is usually one of the major reasons that scares people out of this market right now. So having a little bit of certainty, just a little bit of clarity around what's happening in the market is a very positive sign. But now let's get into the DeFi news, because a lot happened in DeFi overnight. We all know DeFi is one of the strongest narratives in crypto. That's what this show is all about. So let's get into the DeFi news. We have some absolutely massive developments across multiple chains overnight, guys. AAVE is deploying on Fantom. Massive news for Fantom holders. So this will mean that AAVE, it's obviously the biggest borrowing and lending market in crypto, will be deploying on the Fantom chain. So that is very exciting for all of us Fantom holders, because now we have an extra option to unlock multiple new DeFi strategies with borrowing and lending on the AAVE markets. I'll go into more depth tomorrow's show, which will be a dedicated Fantom show. But basically what an AAVE deployment on Fantom means is that it will unlock 1, a bunch of new strategies, and 2, bring a whole lot of new TVL into the ecosystem. What we saw with Matic and AVAX when AAVE deployed on those chains was a massive pump in the TVL, because a lot of people are comfortable with AAVE over other protocols. Right now we have Scream and Taro Finance on Fantom, but a lot of big investors, big institutional money is more comfortable deploying on a protocol like AAVE with a more reputable history. So having that on Fantom will be massive news. It will open up a new market of prospective clients for the Fantom chain. So that is massive news for Fantom, and it's been coming for a while, but this is absolutely official now with this statement from AAVE. The next piece of massive news, guys, is the Anchor deployment on Avalanche. We knew this was coming, but it happened a lot sooner than I was expecting. So if you go onto Anchor now, you can actually switch over to the Avalanche chain, and we have this sexy UI here with this red branding. I think it looks really, really nice. So what this means is you can actually stake and borrow UST on Avalanche now. So if you have UST on Avalanche, obviously you can earn UST on Joe, and UST was deployed across Pangolin and a bunch of farms. Now you can take that UST directly. You don't need to bother with bridging. You can come directly to Anchor and stake your UST through Avalanche. So it's just up here using the toggle. You can switch between the two, and it looks very nice. Obviously, Avalanche is an EVM chain, which means it'll be on MetaMask. So this gives us an option now to be able to borrow using a MetaMask wallet, which is great because Terra Station was a little bit of a barrier for entry for new participants, but this is very big news coming across the ecosystem. Very bullish for Anchor and also very bullish for Avalanche. The next piece of news I have, and the last piece of news before we get into some of the juicy stuff, is that ETH 2.0 is looking very promising in terms of the amount of ETH staked. So over 10% of Ethereum is now staked in ETH 2.0 staking. So a lot of people are anticipating the ETH 2.0 release. Every single day, we get a little bit closer and closer to the ETH 2.0 release, and this staking is looking positive. Over 10% of ETH supply is now staked in ETH 2.0. Another very exciting development. But let's have a look at DeFi Llama now, because this development is one of the biggest in DeFi, because we've had a big pump across the DeFi markets. We saw a plus 1.54% change in the total value locked on DeFi Llama, which is very positive. We obviously saw some of the major chains developing quite nicely. And if we look at this total graph on DeFi Llama, we can see that we are consolidating nicely in this channel here. We're at, I think, 200 billion total value locked almost. We are up from the lows of 186. So it's good to see some nice support coming into this DeFi market right now, which is a very positive sign for us stakers. Obviously, one of the big narratives in crypto right now is DeFi. It's one you can't be sleeping on. But let's have a look through the chains, because the chains is where we really see where some of this price movement is happening. Which chains are the ones leading this DeFi recovery right now? Obviously, we had Avalanche and Terra Luna be very strong performers over the week. We've even seen Fantom reclaiming some of its TVL, up 3% for the day, only down 18% for the month now, which is actually a decent sign because it was down like almost 30% a few days ago. So some TVL is coming back into Fantom as well, which is a positive sign. But there is one narrative which is stronger than the rest when it comes to DeFi at the moment. And that is what we have to talk about right now in today's video. And that is, of course, RUNE Thorchain. Look at this massive explosive growth from Thorchain, up 69% for the month, up 43% for the week. So Thorchain is really leading this DeFi recovery right now, and it's one of the big movers in the space. We can see that the TVL is up almost 85% from these lows of 147 million. An 85% pump in TVL in crypto is massive. So it's a very strong narrative right now with the total value locked over 282 million. But the real question we have to ask is why? Because when it comes to big narratives in crypto, we have to work out exactly why they happened in order for us to identify these narratives in the future. It's no use just us looking at a coin saying, wow, it pumped over 80%, cool. We have to learn from it and learn what happened with this narrative in order to implement those strategies in the future. And I also want to look at why is this happening to Rune, and can we potentially still benefit from this Rune pump? Is there more legs in this pump? Let's get into those details right now. So the RUNE price obviously is up a massive amount since these lows. It's up over 150%. Look at this, 176% from lows. It's at $8.30. It was almost down to $3 at its very, very low here. So it is absolutely pumping right now. And this pump is off the back of a few things. One, the narrative that RUNE has going for it is one of the strongest in crypto. And two, the narrative it has in tandem with its new Luna UST feature is another major reason why this is pumping. And I want to break down those reasons and why this is exploding right now. So let's have a look at what is Thorchain. I know not a lot of you will know exactly what it is. So in this video, I'll be explaining what is Thorchain, why is it pumping, and how can we benefit. What is Thorchain? Firstly, This article does a very good job at explaining it. Basically, Thorchain is a protocol that aims to meet the need of a growing blockchain network through cross-chain liquidity. So we do see the future of crypto is going into this multi-chain kind of universe. We want multiple chains to be able to provide this L1 power. The thing with having multiple chains is that you need liquidity cross-chain. There's no use in conducting swaps if you don't have adequate liquidity. It just opens yourself up to security risk, and it also becomes very expensive for DeFi participants. So what we need is a chain like Rune, which enables for non-custodial swapping, which means that you get to keep your assets when you swap. So a lot of other DEXs, what will happen is when you swap, you get wrapped tokens and you won't actually receive the same token that you put in is what you get out. Whereas in Thorchain, you get to keep custody of your assets when you swap. It's one of the very unique DEXs in crypto, which enables you to do this. And it's why this Thorchain narrative is so strong, because if the future is multi-chain, Thorchain could be at the front of that narrative. So when I was building my portfolio, I did have a large position in Thorchain because I wanted to play this multi-chain narrative. We know it's a massive thing in the future, and Thorchain is a very obvious way for us to play this. It's why I was buying at $3, and I was even buying at $15 because I have conviction in Thorchain long term. So let's just look at this a little bit deeper now. So Thorchain allows the trading of crypto assets across various blockchains in a completely decentralized way, so usually when you swap assets on like a centralized exchange, you're relying on middlemen such as Coinbase, Binance, etc. Obviously, what DEXs do is it gives back power to the people in terms of swapping. So Thorchain enables this, but it also allows you to keep custody of your assets, and it's built on Cosmos, which is called the Internet of Blockchains. We know the Cosmos narrative is very strong, and this also bodes well for Thorchain as well. And that's what makes Thorchain and Luna such an interesting proposition, because Thorchain and Luna are obviously both built on Cosmos. It's very easy for them to interact, and that's why we are seeing some massive developments there that I'll get into in a second. So this multi-chain narrative is very, very big, and Vitalik obviously talked about this a few weeks ago. This was a big narrative with the wormhole exploit. We saw that he was arguing that the future was multi-chain and not cross-chain. And I would tend to agree with this to an extent. I think we need to do a lot of work in terms of cross-chain security to enable effective swapping. However, Thorchain is kind of solving this issue, and that is why I really like Thorchain as a narrative going forward, because I think it does solve a lot of the issues that are presented here by Vitalik. So I think Thorchain not only bodes well for the narrative, but it also bodes well for the current climate of DeFi. And as I said before, Luna is one of those narratives. So you guys know the Luna ecosystem is absolutely exploding. You guys obviously have seen the Luna price explode. As Luna holders, we are very happy with it, but it's also impacting other chains as well. The UST adoption and the utility of UST is also impacting many other chains. And the reason why we had this massive pump from Rune, or one of the major reasons why, is because of this. It's the Luna and Rune flywheel effect happening from the UST deployment on Rune. It's a very interesting thread. I'll cover some of the major points here, which is why Luna and Thorchain could actually be a huge deal and how they can work in tandem with each other. So obviously Luna solves the problem of crypto. You need decentralized stablecoins. Rune also helps this because it solves the other problem, which is needing a decentralized trading platform between different blockchains. So they work very well together because Luna has the stablecoin narrative down pat. Rune has this swapping DEX narrative down pat with its non-custodial swapping. So unlike centralized exchanges, Rune solves a lot of the issues in crypto, and it does it in as an effective way. Luna and Rune have their problems solved with next level tokenomics. We know that Flywheel tokenomics are so important in crypto. What Flywheel means is that basically by one event happening, it spurs on another event happening, and that other event spurs on the initial event happening. So a flywheel is something that gains momentum by events taking place, and it's exponential growth. It's basically a way to quantify exponential growth, and Luna and Rune both have this narrative down pat, and I'll explain why that could pump your bags, as he says here, in a second. So Luna's viral tokenomics are obviously related to the burn. So every time you mint one UST, $1 of Luna is burnt. Rune's tokenomics are slightly different. So they come from its security design, $3 of Rune for every $1 of non-Rune in Thorchain. So this means that to secure cross-chain assets, each asset is pooled 1-to-1 with Rune, and nodes have to bond 2x the value they guard. So every time you pull an asset in Rune, it needs to be paired 1-to-1 with Rune. So if you're putting USD into a pool on something like ThorSwap, you will need to have a 1-to-1 equivalent with Rune. What this does is it means that you're highly incentivized to hold and buy Rune. So anyone wanting to participate in the Rune network, whenever they're depositing, the price of Rune goes up because Rune is required. So there's constant buy pressure on the Rune price. That is why the tokenomics of Rune are so strong. And that's why it's working so well in tandem with Luna, because both of them have amazing tokenomics. So if they can harness each other's power, there is a next level design here in terms of tokenomics coming. So that's just one of the ways Rune allows this swapping to take place. It's through its pools, and obviously having 1-to-1 Rune, the buy pressure is quite intense. So with Luna and UST on Thorchain, both will now have a direct line to any other asset integrated with Thorchain. So we know UST is coming to Thorchain, which is massive news because it opens up a whole new world of DeFi on Thorchain, and it also allows us to play into this Luna narrative too. There's a lot of new liquidity having access to the Terra ecosystem now, and this is happening through the deployment of UST on Thorchain. So this guy goes into a lot of detail that I won't cover exactly in this thread, but he goes into some compelling reasons why this flywheel effect will take place. So I highly recommend checking out this thread if you have some time. But basically, Thorchain now gets the true decentralized stablecoin on the true decentralized exchange. It's a pretty awesome thing. It's going to bring in a ton of new liquidity and volume because the decentralized narrative is very, very strong. So UST holders will be likely to deposit into Thorchain as well. This thread does a great job of explaining how they're going to capture that liquidity, and the maths is quite compelling. So I recommend checking that out. I think the future of Thorchain is looking very strong. And this is exactly why it pumped. As I just said, we have this epic week ahead, which is the Terra deployment on Thorchain with UST. So this was officially announced. It's happening in the next week. So this is massive, massive news. And there's a lot of speculation, not only pumping the Thorchain price, but there's also real data pumping the Thorchain price with the huge TVL increase we've seen on Thorchain. But I want to give you guys some practical examples now of how to take advantage of these pools. I'll show you some of the highest APRs in stablecoins right now on ThorSwap, and I'll go in and break them down step by step as to how you guys can get involved, but also the positives and negatives for this narrative right now, because obviously the price is pumped quite heavily. So we need to find ways to get exposure to Rune without buying into highs at the moment. So let's have a look at some of these pools. This is one of the websites, one of the best exchanges on Thorchain. It's called ThorSwap. So if you guys don't know, Thorchain has multiple dexes which branch off an application like ThorSwap. I can see in the comments here, you don't need Rune to provide liquidity on ThorSwap. And that is one of the major benefits. You don't need to hold the Rune token, but what it will do is obviously need to pair with the Rune token. So although you don't need to hold it, you do need to pair with Rune, and I'll show you how to do that in a second. But let's look at some of these pools because they are offering some quite handy APRs right now. We see BUSD, which is a stablecoin on the Binance chain, paying 85% APY, which is quite a large return on investment. We're seeing USDC on Ethereum paying 59%, which is a very high return on investment. Some of the highest stablecoin yields across crypto are on ThorSwap right now and on the Thor network. So it's very lucrative at the moment, but there is impermanent loss risk as well. So that is also something we need to go into using a calculator so we can work out whether it's worth it or not. But the BUSD one I really like here because it's 86%, and that's now enabling us to earn a crazy amount on our stablecoins, but also help the Thor network. Because as I told you before, the more people that deposit stablecoins into Rune, the more buy pressure on the Rune token, because Rune needs to be paired 1-to-1 with USD. So we are seeing a slight flywheel effect here. The more TVL coming into Rune, the higher the price of Rune becomes. And this is how the tokenomics are designed, because the more liquidity that goes into Rune protocols, the higher the price of Rune will pump. And that's why we've seen this massive explosion in the Rune price, over 170% from $3 to $8.41. Obviously, there's a fair bit of speculation. It is crypto, but that is one of the major reasons we're seeing this pump right now. Ramoss did a good thread here. I recommend going and giving him a follow at Sounds Tricky. He does some great work in terms of covering these ecosystems. He actually has an alternate view. He thinks that it's slightly misleading, but he also goes into his reasoning as to why he likes and dislikes Thorchain. So I think we should go through this right now because it's some valuable insight into the Thorchain ecosystem. So he likes Thorchain. It's a blockchain built from Cosmos, which obviously is a layer 1, built to be able to swap native assets to other native assets, as I talked about before. RUNE is a settlement assets for all pools and tokens. So this is what I was talking about before. It means that every token that is pooled in RUNE is pooled 50-50 with RUNE. So every RUNE that is pooled, an additional RUNE is held to allow settlements. Very, very smart design for the tokenomics. If you want to make a swap from Bitcoin to Ethereum, it's a double swap. Bitcoin to RUNE, RUNE to Ethereum. Fees are more complicated and left for another time. I'll have to talk about that in a future video, but he did a graphic here which shows you how it basically works. So you put in your Bitcoin, there's a 1-to-1 RUNE reserve, so it's swapped to RUNE, and then that RUNE is then swapped to Ethereum, and it allows you to take out your ETH through RUNE. This is very good because you have assets like Bitcoin paired with RUNE, so there's natural liquidity in Thorchain, unlike some of these other dexes which are getting the wrapped tokens. You're actually swapping your Bitcoin for ETH, and you're getting real Ethereum, not a wrapped Ethereum token, because it uses this 1-to-1 mechanism here, which is demonstrated on this graphic. You can check out this thread if you're interested to learn a little bit more. There's a bit of a misunderstood section that Sounds Tricky talks about, staking/pooling. Below is what the pool page looks like on ThorSwap. So a lot of people are under a misconception here that you can just deposit USD stablecoins and get 81% APY plus on your yield. That is true, but remember, it is pairing with RUNE 1-to-1. So you are having exposure to the RUNE token, which does enable you and sets you up for impermanent loss, because we are seeing a lot of people right now talking about how amazing this single-sided staking is on RUNE. But remember, there is impermanent loss. But I don't actually think it's as bad as first suggested. Because the APY is so high on these assets, you're actually offsetting impermanent loss, in my opinion. So let's look at a calculator to work out, if you deposit stablecoins, how much you could potentially be making or losing. And I think this is valuable to look through because we want to be fully aware of the impermanent loss risks. So based on the 87% APY right now on the BUSD pool, we are going to have a look at how much money you'll be making per year through staking your USD with RUNE, and also how much you are potentially losing, quote unquote, to impermanent loss. So if the price of RUNE doubles, let's say over the next year, the price of RUNE goes from $7 to $15. And you put in $1,000 of USD. These examples are based on $1,000 of USD and $125 of RUNE, which means your initial investment is $2,000. That is what I'm basing this strategy off. So if your initial investment is $2,000 and RUNE doubles, you're actually making 141% on your investment, which means your predicted value will be 4.82K. So you're making 2.82K in 1 year off staking your USD in Thorchain, but pairing 1-to-1, obviously. If you just hodled, which means holding USD and holding Thorchain in your wallet and not staking it, you're earning 1.82. So you're much better off staking it based on the 87% APY. Even if RUNE does a 10x, which is very, very bullish, but let's just say it did 10x, and you put in the equivalent $1,000 as well, you'd still be up 19% on what you would be if you held the tokens in your wallet. So that is also very positive, because even if RUNE 10x's, you're still better off being in this pool than holding RUNE in your wallet. If the price of RUNE really significantly goes down, let's say minus 75%, your predicted value will go down, obviously, but you're still making money based on hodling. So obviously you're losing money, but you're still making based on compared to hodling. So where does the issue come in? Because right here, it seems like a no-brainer, right? If you're going to hold USD and you're going to hold RUNE, you may as well deposit it into Thorchain, because there's not much of a risk of impermanent loss. And here's the risk. If this APY drops, and it will drop, you're obviously exposing yourself to more risk. So this is assuming you're holding these tokens for a year. There's many scenarios where people are not able to hold for an entire year. And there's also a scenario where the APY significantly drops. So let's say the APY halves to 40%. Obviously, if RUNE doubles, your predicted value is now only up 88% versus what it would be before, which was 144%. If Rune goes down 75%, your predicted value is still better versus hodling, but it's not quite as good as it was before with the higher APY. So here's the thing, guys. You have to be wary of impermanent loss, because if this APY drops, or you're not planning on holding for an entire year, you can expose yourself to impermanent loss. But here is my take on depositing into these pools right now. I think they are very lucrative. And I think right now it's still a decent bet. With an 86% APY, you're very unlikely to suffer impermanent loss because the APY is so high. So it's actually offsetting impermanent loss. However, I still would be very wary of this, because potentially if this APY drops, or you need liquidity, so you need to take out your stablecoins or Rune, you could potentially be set up for a little bit of issues with this pool. So I wouldn't be aping into this pool for those reasons, but I would certainly have it on my radar. Maybe we wait a week or so to see how this plays out, but the Thorchain yields right now are some of the best in crypto, and I'm personally going to be getting involved in some of these pools because I already hold Rune. And that is one of the keys here. I already hold Rune. Some of you guys might not, and some of you might actually want to own it. So what would be my strategy for accumulating if you don't hold, or if you don't have enough? How would I be accumulating? Okay, so we're at $8.40 right now. Obviously, we can't buy after a major pump like this, guys. I know the fundamentals are very, very solid, but there is a lot of hype right now around Luna and around this UST deployment on Thorchain. So I would keep maybe my chips up my sleeve here for a potential scenario where the price drops a little bit. So if we pull back to the $5 to $6 region, that is a nice level of support. That is a region that I would be very interested in buying some Rune. Or if we really pump up to $10, say now, it will definitely pull back to the $8.40 region. We often see after massive pumps, we do get that pullback. That is when I would be looking at buying. I'm going to get Sheldon to chart this either on the next show or on the website, so you guys can get his charts as well. But I think that I would be very interested around the $5 to $6 range. I was accumulating this at $3, so my situation is a little bit different from others. My advice sometimes is, when in doubt, get an initial position. If you're really bullish on Rune, getting a tiny position of your desired position isn't a bad idea. But I must be explicit in that if you're buying a position now, it must be a small position of your desired amount. Let's say you want to put in $10,000 over the next 6 months. I probably wouldn't be buying more than $1,000, so 10% of your desired position, just because it's pumped so hard. And I can't suggest buying into the highs now, but there is a very good lesson in this. And there's an extremely nice lesson in this narrative. And that is, look for the facilitating factors. I know that sounds like a hard thing to unpack, but this is what I mean. Luna pumped, right? The Luna price pumped very heavily, and we saw the Luna narrative happening first. But people that saw the Luna narrative pumping also saw Rune, because they knew that UST deployment was happening on Rune, and we knew that this flywheel effect was in place. The thread I showed you before was over a month ago, so you had ample time to accumulate at $3 to $4. So my advice for identifying a narrative like this in the future would be, look at the factors that are influencing the main factor. In this case, the main factor was Luna. The Luna price was pumping. So instead of just saying, Luna's pumping, let me ape into Luna, you should have been looking at the next level down. And that next level is saying, what can help Luna succeed? What are the protocols that succeed from Luna's success? And the answer to that question in this case would have been Rune. So in the future, instead of looking at crypto linearly, look at the factors which are influencing other factors. If a token's pumping, think about what infrastructure helps that token pump. Think about what infrastructure helps that project succeed as well, because those are major factors in crypto to be able to benefit from major pumps across the crypto market and major rallies. I did promise you guys a third narrative though. This video is called 3 Huge Crypto Trends, but I'm running out of time to explain it in this video now. So what I want to do is, I still want to reveal that third narrative for you guys, but we should do it over on Twitter live. So right after this stream ends, I will be live streaming on my Twitter. It's got a link in the description to my Twitter account. If you want to wait over there for a couple minutes, as soon as I end this stream, I will be live streaming that third narrative on Twitter, and I'll also be answering your questions in the form of a Q&A. So make sure you check out my Twitter, link in the description, and join me for a live right now. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed. I will see you in the next one. Peace out.